Hello, Awesome Soul here, and welcome to something that I was going to cover in the last video, but I sort of ran out of time. And that would be Mark, the design jammer, aka the CEO of FreeJam Games, the makers of Robocraft, his little concept, I guess you could say, and that is the Fast and Formidable 3 forum post that he has created. This was actually put up on the 2nd, but I'm sure a lot of you probably missed this. Now, for those of you keeping up with the channel, I did cover his first version of another idea he recently had for some changes he wants to do for the game, but only if the community wants them, hence why he's put this out there to gather feedback, basically. So the gist of this version of his concept is that he will be taking away the weapon power bar. You know, when you build a robot, you place down CPU, and the little bar on the left side drains, and that's your total weapon power? Well, what he wants to do is change that weapon power bar to a movement power bar. So the more CPU you add to your bot, the slower you will move. So he writes here, small robots will always be more agile and have a faster top speed than larger robots. But all robots will have the same weapon power. So that means no longer will you have a 2000 CPU tank that you can't really strap any of the super heavy weapons on because you just don't simply have enough power. That's kind of what he's trying to remedy with this system here. He continues by giving us a point form list, which I will read out for you. So here is what we will get with this proposed concept. All robots will have maximum power to their weapons regardless of CPU, but all CPU added to your robot will drain power from the movement parts. So less power for acceleration, thrust, top speed, etc, etc. Although I think that kind of covers it, so there's really no need for anything more, but regardless, he continues, so small robots will tend to be faster than large ones, and large ones will tend to be slower. Of course, this is not always going to be the case. If you obviously opt for a wheel rather than a mech leg, the wheel is always going to be faster than the mech leg, at least I would assume. Since now with the reworked wheels, the whole point of them is to go super fast. So even with a super high CPU wheelbot, it probably won't be going too slow, but definitely a lot slower than a low CPU wheelbot. Large robots obviously will have more health, more redundancy, and more weapon options. This isn't a new feature, this is just simply a byproduct of having more CPU. If you add more stuff to your bot will have more stuff. Rather obvious there. So this means that large weapons will now work best on large robots, but still can be used on smaller robots as well. Whereas small weapons will be great on small robots as they tend to use less CPU, so you will maintain your high agility and speed. Adding thrusters to your hover will still make it faster, as thrusters have a higher top speed than hovers, but adding too many thrusters will drain your movement power and therefore slow you down. Think of it like overloading your robot's power core with too many movement parts. We could also remove diminishing returns on movement parts as well. We can also remove the concept of carry mass, slowing you down. So carry mass is only how much weight your hovers, airfoils, rotors, etc, can actually carry upwards. And that's all he has there. If you would like to submit your responses to this, I would recommend going over to the forums and posting in the thread. The link should be in the description down below. Now, what exactly are my thoughts on this? Well, one of the things that definitely stands out by reading throughout that little list there is the whole adding thrusters to your hover part. I'll reiterate, he says, adding thrusters to your hover will still make it faster, as thrusters will have a higher top speed than hovers, but adding too many thrusters will drain the movement power and slow you down. That right there is a massive problem, because the whole thing that he's trying to avert here is the problem we have now. Whereas if you want to have a big beefy weapon, you're gonna have to strap it on. But the big beefy weapons also have a high CPU cost, and just naturally having that high CPU cost is going to drain your power, therefore giving you less power, aka ammo, in order to use the weapon. So that part there is rather counterintuitive. This system right here, at least that little blurb, is exactly the same problem, just for movement parts. No difference. So You're trading out one problem for the exact same problem, just sort of like a mirror image of itself. So you want to add more movement parts to make yourself faster, but in doing so, you also make yourself slower, which is just really weird. I don't get that. The other thing here is that I don't see this really changing much of anything as far as small robot viability goes. There is a problem in the game at the moment where pretty much as soon as you go under 1,000-ish CPU, and even then it might be a little bit too low, you would pretty much be considered unviable, unless you have some weird, wacky build that I don't know of. You're kind of putting yourself in challenge mode there. And under this system, if you always have the maximum possible ammo count, aka weapon power, then why would you really want to go with a really super small bot? Everyone at that point would just build maximum CPU, because there's still going to be differences in speed. Obviously, a wheel bot at 2000 CPU is going to be faster than a mech leg bot at 2000 CPU, but they're both equally tanky, so I can see here a metagame developing where there's literally no reason to bring a super low CPU, aka faster bot, because you're just gonna melt super quickly against these enemies that have the exact same weapon power that you do, but are packing larger, more CPU costly weapons. So those there are really my big complaints with this system. I think they are a pretty massive problem. Honestly, something I think they should do. It's not exactly related, but I think it is kind of a symptom that is causing this problem in a way. At least it's one part of the puzzle. It's that we have so many of the quote-unquote light weapons, you know, the weapons that are really low CPU cost, like the lasers, rails, nanos, plasma, etc., etc. Although Tesla, I think that kind of, yeah, that covers all of them. But anyways, I honestly think we just have too many of them, and it's really just a holdover from days of Robocraft long past. There used to be 10 versions of the laser, plus the mega laser. But now they cut those in half, mainly because two sizes used the same model. It just one step up had a fin, and then it would upgrade to the new model, and then it would have a fin, and then it would upgrade to the new model, and so on and so forth. But they got rid of the finned versions, and now they just have the regular versions. But I think they should honestly cut the numbers down. For the lasers, maybe just scrap 2 of them, so you're using the smallest model, the middle model, and the largest model. And then, of course, you have the mega model as well, the Leviathan. Another thing that needs to happen is to differentiate these weapons, because there's nothing really super different from them. I mean, yeah, the smaller ones use less power, they're more power efficient, but they're not really dealing a whole lot of damage. And even at maximum CPU, you can still fire those tiny lasers for quite a while before running out of power. So I think that particular stat layout isn't needed. So you could bump up the power usage and the damage output. So honestly, what I think they should do is have the smallest one be the sort of power efficient one. Keep that as it is, but just make it more powerful. Have the middle one be sort of like a specialist weapon. So give players a sort of unique take on the laser. It's fairly different, but it's definitely still a laser. So it could, for example, have a higher projectile speed with some other sort of drawback. And then the largest size would be your typical heavy hitter. So give players that kind of option. Make them different. Maybe not even have a super energy efficient one, although that is still kind of needed if we're going to be keeping the power to CPU thing. And of course, you could do this with all of the other ones as well. So cut down the plasma so there's only 3 instead of 5, cut down the rails so there's 3 instead of 4, and I guess the nanos, there really are only 3. Same with the Teslas. Though, to be honest, I'm not really sure we need all the Teslas except for the biggest one. There isn't really a huge reason as to why you would ever choose the smaller 2 Teslas over the bigger one. It's clearly better in pretty much every way. So yeah, to sum it up, basically they need to differentiate the weapons a bit more, make each size unique by either cutting them down like I said, or keeping the numbers they have now, but just make more of them unique. Like another rail one I thought of, for example, would deal quite a bit of damage, but the projectile is fairly slow moving. I mean, I could go on forever and ever and list off a whole bunch of different specialized, I guess you could say, subclasses of these weapons, but I think you get the idea. So that will do it for today's video. Let me know down below if you have any ideas for pretty much anything I talked about today. Any feedback, and of course, if you would like to let Mark know your thoughts on this, your best way of doing that is going over to the forums and typing your response out there. Anyways guys, I of course have been the Awesome Soul. I thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.